Imagine you are asleep in your own bed, like inside your own apartment.
Right. Your supposed safe space.
Exactly. The one place in the world where you're supposed to feel entirely secure. The date is June 3rd, 2022. It's right around 2 in the morning. And you wake up suddenly,
Oh, geez.
and there is a dark figure standing over you, just staring down at you in the pitch black.
I mean, that is literally the absolute worst case scenario. It's a primal fear, realize.
It really is. So you scream, because of course you do,
Right.
but the figure doesn't attack. They just turn and bolt. They run out of your bedroom, out the front door, and just vanish into the night without making a single sound.
Not even a word.
Not a single word. So you get up, your heart is obviously pounding, you check the door, the locks aren't broken, you check your valuables, like nothing is missing.
Okay, so it's not a robbery.
Right. But when you walk into the kitchen, the intruder has left exactly one bizarre item sitting right on the counter. A medium-sized jar of kosher dill pickles.
A jar of pickles. Which, I mean, that completely defies any conventional logic of a home invasion. It's almost absurd.
It is absurd, and, well, it sets the stage for the mission of today's deep dive. We are looking into the baffling and honestly still unsolved murder of 19-year-old Rachel Hansen in Gilbert, Arizona.
It's such a frustrating case to dig into.
It really is. And to untangle this web, we're drawing from a very frustrating stack of sources today. We have a heavily redacted 338-page police file, the meticulous investigative notes from a private investigator, and these really harrowing firsthand accounts from the victim's own family.
Right, because we really want to understand how a crime scene can make absolutely no physical sense.
Exactly.
And, we really need to emphasize why that first break-in is so important. That terrifying incident with the pickle jar wasn't just a random weird occurrence. It really appears to have been a rehearsal.
Wait, how so? Like a practice run?
Yes, because the very next night, June 4th, again at 2 in the morning, an intruder returns to Rachel's apartment. But this time, they aren't standing quietly in the dark.
Oh, God.
Yeah. They violently kick in Rachel's bedroom door, raise a handgun, and shoot her.
It's just so awful.
It is. Rachel somehow manages to find her phone, drag herself to the bathroom, and call 911. She actually tells the dispatcher she's been shot.
She made the call herself.
She did, and first responders arrive within 5 minutes, but the internal damage is just too severe. She dies in surgery about 3 hours later.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because literally nothing about the physical evidence adds up here.
Yeah.
The police response is baffling to the point of being infuriating, and the source material lays out 3 wildly different theories about who actually pulled the trigger.
It's a lot to sort through.
It is. But before we even get to the suspect list, I really want to talk about the impossible physics of this crime scene.
Yeah, the physical environment of Unit 3133 is central to the mystery. When police arrive, the apartment is incredibly stark. Rachel had literally just moved back in, so it's basically empty.
Just a mattress, right?
Just a mattress, a box spring, and this overpowering stench of marijuana baked into the carpets from the previous tenant. But, the truly baffling detail isn't inside the 4 walls of the apartment. It's the environment surrounding it.
Right. We need to talk about the acoustics in this building.
Exactly. These apartment walls were famously paper thin. Like, tenants reported that you could hear televisions and just normal indoor voice conversations through them.
Just totally thin drywall.
Right. Now, factor in the sequence of events on the night of the murder. An intruder enters the apartment. They kick Rachel's bedroom door so hard it leaves a partial shoe print.
Wow.
And it busts the door entirely off its hinges. Following that massive impact, they fire a handgun.
And the neighbors right across the hall, who, by the way, were wide awake because they had just gotten home from late-night bowling around 1:0 or 2 a.m.,
Yeah.
They told investigators they heard absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all. No gunshot, no splintering wood, no hurried footsteps running down the hallway.
I mean, it's like living as a soundproof vacuum, where violence happens but makes absolutely no noise.
It really is.
And let's break down the mechanics of that, because it drives me crazy. Even if we assume the killer used a silencer on the gun, which, suppresses airborne noise to some degree, you cannot silence the physical impact of a door being violently kicked in.
No, absolutely not.
Because impact noise travels differently than airborne noise, right? A heavy boot hitting a wooden door frame sends shockwaves through the structural joists of the building. You literally feel that kind of noise in your floorboards as much as you hear it.
You do.
So how is it physically possible that nobody registered a thing?
This raises an important question, right? It implies a deeply unsettling level of precision. We were dealing with an intruder who was either impossibly lucky or someone who knew exactly how to navigate the blind spots of that specific building.
And there were a lot of blind spots.
So many. And that forces us to look at the illusion of security at this complex. It was heavily marketed to residents as a, safe, gated community.
Oh, the security theater. I love this concept.
It is entirely psychological. Total theater. When investigators pressed the leasing office, management flat out admitted that none of the complex's security cameras actually recorded anything.
Wait, really? None of them?
None of them. They were just empty plastic domes on the ceiling. Furthermore, the electronic gates were frequently broken or just left wide open. Anyone could walk right off the street and into the hallways.
So if the killer knew the building was functionally wide open, maybe they also felt confident they knew exactly who was inside the apartment.
That's a very logical jump.
And that geographical confidence leads directly into the first major theory presented in the files, the subletter.
Right. To understand how this theory developed, we have to look at Rachel's living situation over the prior 6 months. Rachel had landed what she considered her absolute dream job working at a horse ranch.
A total horse girl.
Yeah, and it was a position that came with on-site housing. But since she didn't want to lose her Gilbert apartment, she arranged an off-the-book sublet to a woman we only know from the files as America.
And off-the-book sublets always create massive blind spots. For 6 months, the neighbors had front-row seats to what they strongly suspected was an active drug operation.
Oh, absolutely.
They reported random people coming and going at all hours, loud arguments, and like you mentioned, the smell of weed was so potent that Rachel had to deep clean the carpets when she finally took the apartment back.
And the timeline of taking the apartment back is what really fuels this theory. Rachel only evicted America because she lost that dream ranch job and suddenly needed a place to live.
Right, it was very abrupt.
Everything moved very fast. Rachel officially moved her belongings back into Unit 3133 on June 2nd. She was murdered in that exact same unit on June 4th.
Just 48 hours later.
Right. So the prevailing initial theory is a classic case of mistaken identity.
That makes sense on the surface.
It does. The idea is that the killer was actually targeting America, maybe over a drug debt or a cartel dispute, and had no idea she had been evicted just 2 days prior. They broke into the apartment expecting to find a drug dealer and found Rachel instead.
Wait, I have to push back on this logic, though.
Okay, go ahead.
If this was just geographical mistaken identity, what about the intruder from the first night?
The pickle jar incident.
Yeah, the one who stood over her bed and left the pickles. Wouldn't that person have looked down, realized it was Rachel in the bed, and known America was gone?
Well, that is the single biggest hole in the mistaken identity theory.
Right. If you break into a dark apartment looking to settle a violent drug debt, and you realize the completely wrong person is sleeping there, you leave. You don't come back.
You definitely don't.
You certainly don't return the very next night, kick down an interior door, and start shooting.
Yeah, when we analyze the psychology of drug-related hits or robberies, they're usually swift and transactional.
Exactly.
The timeline of 2 consecutive break-ins severely weakens the mistaken identity angle. That first intrusion on June 3rd allowed the perpetrator to verify exactly who was in the bed.
They saw her face.
They did. So returning the second night to commit a murder implies a specific targeted intent. If it wasn't a geographical mistake, it had to be a personal target.
And if the target was personal, we really have to look at the people in Rachel's orbit.
Yeah.
To do that, we have to understand what she had just lost in the weeks prior to her death.
Yeah.
Her dream job, and with it, her sanctuary.
We really need to contextualize Rachel's psychological state here. She wasn't just a typical 19-year-old trying to figure out a career path. She had survived a genuinely horrific early childhood.
The family refers to this as the dark years, right?
Yes, they do. The files detail how she was abandoned by her birth mother. She was left in the care of a cocaine dealer who tragically died in their home while she was at kindergarten.
Which is just heartbreaking.
It's awful. She was eventually adopted by the Hansen family at age 6, but the trauma left her with reactive attachment disorder, or RAD.
And for anyone listening who might be unfamiliar, how does RAD actually manifest?
Well, RAD fundamentally alters how a child forms bonds. It stems from severe early neglect, making it incredibly difficult for the person to feel safe, trust others, or just regulate their emotions.
Like their nervous system is totally hijacked.
Exactly. Their brain is essentially stuck in a constant threat response loop.
But she found a way to bypass that trauma response through horses. Like we said, she was a dedicated horse girl.
Yes, completely devoted.
Equine therapy is actually incredibly effective for trauma survivors because horses mirror human emotions without any of the judgment or complexity of human relationships. She loved it so much she literally turned down a full college scholarship to take this job living and working at a horse ranch in Queen Creek.
The ranch was her grounding mechanism. But in May of 2022, that environment turned completely toxic.
Right.
The ranch owners, Liz and Amanda, began heavily pressuring Rachel. They insisted she ride a young, untrained horse before it was really ready.
Which is so dangerous.
It is. Rachel expressed that she was terrified, but she felt she had to do it to keep her housing and her job. And, predictably, the horse immediately threw her.
And the tension just escalated from there, didn't it?
Oh, rapidly.
Rachel was blamed for $10,000 in damage to a horse trailer. Ultimately, a major horse sale fell through, and the owners fired her. And I mean, for a teenager with reactive attachment disorder, this isn't just losing a paycheck.
No, not at all.
It is the complete collapse of her identity and her safe space.
Which triggered an immediate severe mental health crisis. Rachel actually drove to Sedona with a handgun, threatening self-harm. Law enforcement intervened, and she was institutionalized for a short psychiatric hold.
But while she's sitting in a treatment center just trying to stabilize, she gets hit with another blow. She finds out these ranch owners are refusing to return her personal horse, Dash.
They literally held the horse hostage.
Yes. They were holding the animal for a $5,000 ransom, claiming she owed them for vet care and feed.
What's fascinating here is how the public reacted. When you lay out those facts, it is so easy to see why internet sleuths immediately latched onto this theory.
Boy, they went wild.
They did. You have disgruntled former employers, a bitter falling out, a mental health crisis, and a literal $5,000 extortion plot over a beloved animal. It reads like the plot of a thriller.
It totally does. And the public ran with it, just relentlessly harassing the ranch owners online, accusing them of hiring someone to take Rachel out.
But when we apply critical investigative thinking, the narrative falls apart rapidly.
How so?
Well, when Rachel was in crisis in Sedona, the people who actually dialed 911 to get her life-saving help were the ranch owners.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Furthermore, from a strict law enforcement standpoint, police cleared both women very quickly based on rock-solid alibis for the night of the murder.
So what does this all mean? If the threat wasn't coming from the drug-dealing subletters past, and it wasn't coming from the dramatic fallout at the horse ranch, we have to look at the only other source of massive chaos in Rachel's life right before she died.
And this introduces a figure who was actively, aggressively sabotaging her personal life. Someone terrifyingly close to home.
Let's talk about the fiancé's father, Gary Bailey.
Right.
Rachel was engaged to a young man named JT, and his dad, Gary. Well, the files note that his own church community literally dubbed him Scary Gary.
Which tells you a lot. The psychological profile the private investigator built on Gary is alarming. He was highly controlling, particularly regarding his son, JT.
But something shifted, right?
Yes. A massive behavioral shift happened recently when Gary's wife, Ava, caught him having sexual affairs with his male employees.
And she didn't just suspect it, she caught it on audio recordings she secretly made from his work truck.
Exactly. When Ava confronted him with the evidence and asked for a divorce, Gary's personality fractured. The control he exerted over his family evaporated, and he became erratic, angry, and just aggressively vindictive.
And he aimed a disproportionate amount of that vitriol right at Rachel.
He really did.
The timeline of his aggression is critical here. On April 27th, so just a little over a month before the murder things reached a boiling point, Rachel was exhausted by the family drama and gave JT an ultimatum regarding his father's toxic behavior.
And how did JT respond?
JT responded by threatening suicide and then completely stopped answering his phone.
So Rachel panics.
Completely.
She drives over to Gary's house to find JT and make sure he is safe. When she arrives, Gary is just sitting in his car in the driveway. Rachel begs him to call JT. Gary refuses, flatly telling her that he doesn't take his own son's suicide threats seriously.
Which is so cold. And Rachel is so desperate she actually blocks the driveway with her car to stop Gary from leaving until they find JT.
And Gary's response is purely violent.
Yes.
He throws his car in reverse, rams directly into Rachel's car, gets out, and physically tries to drag her out of the driver's seat. When she fights him off, he drives his car over the front lawn just to escape.
And the escalation doesn't stop there. Later that same day, Gary sends Rachel a text message that is fully documented by police. It reads, and I quote, If I ever see you in my house again, I will shoot you in the head.
I mean, that is a documented, written death threat.
It is.
Which is why the events of June 3rd rolling into June 4th are so suspicious. JT is actually with Rachel inside her apartment on the night of the murder. But at midnight, JT abruptly leaves.
Wait, he leaves the apartment just 2 hours before a gunman kicks down the door? Why did he leave?
Because he received a phone call from his father, Gary, telling him to come home immediately.
You're kidding.
No! And the only reason investigators even know about this call is because Gary later stood up in front of his church congregation and bragged about it.
Oh my gosh.
He claimed the Holy Spirit spoke to him, telling him to make that call, and that divine revelation saved his son's life.
Oh, how incredibly convenient. The Holy Spirit tells you to pull your son out of an apartment exactly 2 hours before a targeted hit takes place.
It's highly suspicious.
Extremely. And I know the PI notes mentioned that witnesses from that same church claimed Gary had a history of bragging about knowing how to hire untraceable hitmen to make his problems disappear.
Right, the implication being that Gary hired a professional to eliminate Rachel. He viewed her as a threat to the control he had over his son, and he made that midnight call to ensure JT was safely out of the crossfire.
But, okay, here's where my brain just breaks on this theory. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, lay it out.
If Gary hired a slick, untraceable professional hitman, why would a professional bring a medium-sized jar of kosher dill pickles on a trial run the night before?
It makes no sense.
Right. And why would a seasoned killer clumsily kick down an interior bedroom door the next night, leaving a partial shoe print?
Yeah.
None of that sounds like a clean professional hit. That sounds incredibly chaotic. It sounds like a total amateur.
It's a massive behavioral contradiction. The physical evidence, the pickle jar, the kicked door, the shoe print, points to someone inexperienced, operating on raw emotion, panic, or perhaps under the influence. Yet the execution of the crime, the lack of witnesses, the evasion of security cameras, the complete disappearance into the night points to someone highly capable and methodical. It's a total paradox.
And it's exactly the kind of paradox a rigorous, well-funded police investigation is designed to solve, isn't it?
You would hope so.
Which brings us to the most frustrating part of this entire deep dive. The system completely and utterly failed Rachel Hansen.
The systemic failures documented in these files are staggering. Let's start with the immediate aftermath at the hospital. Rachel dies after making the 911 call herself. Her parents, who live barely 30 minutes away from the hospital, are not notified of her shooting until 5 hours after she passes away.
That is just unacceptable. Imagine you're Rachel's family. You find out your daughter has been murdered 5 hours too late to even say goodbye.
It's a nightmare.
And when you finally try to get answers from the police, they hand over a 338-page case file. But it is so heavily redacted, it's essentially a void.
The redaction process is often a huge point of friction in these cases. Under Freedom of Information laws, police departments can claim exemptions for ongoing investigations.
Right.
This legally allows them to take a black marker to almost anything. Witness names, timelines, forensic results, rendering the file functionally useless to the family or outside investigators.
But the most egregious failure isn't the paperwork, it's Gary Bailey.
Yes.
The man who sent Rachel a documented text message threatening to shoot her in the head. The man who suspiciously called his son away from the crime scene 2 hours before the murder. He was never brought in for questioning.
Never. Not once.
Rachel's mother actually confronted the chief of police face-to-face about this. She demanded to know why the prime suspect hadn't been interrogated, and the chief's response was, "We left him a voicemail. We can't force somebody to talk."
Just unbelievable.
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but isn't that literally what a subpoena is for? How can a police chief just throw his hands up over an unreturned voicemail in a murder investigation?
It speaks to a profound lack of investigative pressure. When law enforcement decides a case is too complex or lacks immediate slam-dunk evidence, apathy can set in very quickly. And that apathy clearly extended to the physical crime scene itself.
Which leads us back to the most surreal detail of this entire case. The phantom pickles.
Yeah, the phantom pickles. When police finally cleared the crime scene and released the apartment back to the family, Rachel's mother, Kim, went in to collect her daughter's belongings.
Right.
And sitting right there on the kitchen counter, untouched, was the jar of pickles from the first break-in.
Kim assumed the police had obviously dusted it for fingerprints, right? I mean, it was literally the only thing the intruder left behind in a practically empty apartment.
It's the most obvious piece of evidence.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle and throwing away the only edge piece you have. So, assuming they had processed it, Kim took the jar home It sat in her garage for a while until she eventually just threw it out.
But when she later asked investigators if they ever pulled any viable prints off the glass, the police looked at her blankly. They said, "What pickle jar?"
Wait, they completely missed it.
They claim they never saw it, and it was never logged into evidence.
They completely missed it. And we know for a fact they missed it because the private investigator combed through hours of blurred police body cam footage from the scene. At the very end of one video, as an officer is walking through the kitchen scanning the counters, you can actually hear him mutter under his breath, "No pickles."
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is a chilling reminder of how real life differs from true crime fiction.
Yeah.
Cases don't always go cold because there's a brilliant criminal mastermind pulling the strings and outsmarting the detectives. They go cold because of human error and systemic apathy.
Exactly.
They go cold because of missed microclues. A partial shoe print left on a door that isn't matched to a suspect, or a grocery item bizarrely out of place that gets left behind. They go cold because the system fails to apply basic legal pressure to obvious persons of interest.
It is absolutely maddening. Put yourself in the shoes of Rachel's parents.
Yeah.
Rachel overcame a genuinely horrific childhood to build a life she loved. She was fiercely independent. She loved her horses. She was actively trying to build a future despite the trauma she carried.
She was really trying.
She was. And it was all snatched away in a crime scene that defies basic logic. Now, the only people championing her case are her family and a pro bono private investigator, Justin Yentis, who is fighting tooth and nail just to get unredacted files.
As we look at the totality of these sources, I want to leave you with a lingering thought about the world we live in today. Think about the concept of digital and physical footprints.
Okay.
We live in a modern era, completely saturated with Ring cameras on every porch, cell phone towers pinging our locations every second, digital communications tracking our thoughts, and, paper-thin apartment walls where neighbors hear everything. We are constantly told by society that everything we do leaves a trace.
We're told it's impossible to disappear.
Exactly. So how does an armed intruder walk into a modern apartment building, violently kick down a door with enough force to splinter the frame, fire a handgun, and then vanish entirely into thin air without a single neighbor hearing a sound or a single camera catching their face?
It's terrifying.
Perhaps the terrifying truth isn't that this killer was an untraceable, brilliant mastermind. Perhaps the truth is that we are far less surveilled, and our environments are far less protected than modern society leads us to believe.
That is a terrifying thought to sit with, and it's exactly why you need to keep thinking critically about the media and the narratives surrounding these unsolved mysteries. It's so easy to get caught up in the wild, cinematic theories, the cartel hitmen, the dramatic ranch owners, the bizarre clues. But behind every heavily redacted police file, there is a real life, like Rachel's, just waiting for an answer. And sometimes that answer is hiding behind a door no one bothered to knock on, or a jar left sitting on a counter. We'll leave it there for today. Take care, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.